Hello and welcome to NTD Canada News Election Special Series. I'm your host, Gary Bai. Macdonald-Laurier Institute published a report titled Chinese State Interference in Canada's 2021 Election, this week outlining some of the Chinese Communist Party's election interference operations days before Canadians head to the polls. Joshua Fry, owner of OCR Academy Gym, said he will not enforce his customers to show proof of vaccination. He believes the vaccine passport system threatens his customers' freedom of choice and discriminates based on medical history. Without further ado, let's get to it. September 15th was day 32 of the federal election campaign, with only 5 days left before the election. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau was in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Fredericton, New Brunswick, and Longueuil, Quebec on September 15th. In Fredericton, Trudeau claimed that the pandemic needs to end now, with everyone getting vaccinated, and praised his own party for the economic recovery. He also argued in Halifax that the Liberal government had met some of the promises they made. Former Prime Minister John Chrétien made an appearance supporting Trudeau on the campaign trail Tuesday night. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole was in Saguenay and Orford, Quebec. O'Toole's promised again to increase the annual growth rate of the Canada Health Transfer to 6%. He said the Conservatives' proposed childcare tax credit would be enacted immediately and provide immediate relief to families. While in Orford, O'Toole was joined by former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, who compared O'Toole's past few months to the lead-up to his 1984 election win. Mulroney read the latest report from Fraser Institute that Canada has fallen out of the top 10 countries for economic freedom due to higher taxes and increased regulation. At campaign stops in London, Hamilton, Brampton, and Welland, Ontario, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh exclaimed his campaign slogan, "Better is possible," which is quite like what Trudeau put up 6 years ago. Along the campaign trail, Singh said he would fund his plan for better by having billionaires pay their fair share and taxing the billionaires with unlimited zeal. In Essex, Ontario, Singh repeated his promises to take the profits out of the long-term care business. Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet was in Châteauguay, Longueuil, and Montreal, Quebec. Blanchet said the question about Bill 21 by moderator Shashi Kurl during the national English debate helped him to win support. Bill 21 bans the wearing of religious symbols by people in authority. Green Party leader Adam Paul was campaigning in Kitchener and Toronto, Ontario. People's Party leader Maxime Bernier was in Ontario. He joined several rallies and events. Bernier called for an end to vaccine mandates and expressed his support for the freedom of choice. According to a Reuters article, Canada's annual inflation rate accelerated to an 18-year high in August, driven by broad upward price pressures, data showed on Wednesday, just days before the federal election. The rate rose to 4.1% in August, its fastest clip since March 2003, Statistics Canada said, beating analyst estimates and prompting Trudeau's main rival to pounce over the rising cost of living. In Canada, the hot inflation print was driven by high gasoline prices, rising housing costs, and the surge in the prices of goods like furniture, appliances, and vehicles, along with high travel-related costs as restrictions eased. Meanwhile, the Homeowners Replacement Cost Index, which tracks the cost to replace a home at current prices, increased by 14.3%. The rising cost of housing has become one of the biggest issues for voters in this election, especially in the Toronto and Vancouver areas. In Greater Vancouver, the Conservatives, NDP, and Liberals are locked in several tight three-way races. The price for a home in Vancouver has increased to $300,000 since November. The average detached home in the region now sells for roughly $1.8 million. Opposition parties suggest that the latest surge in prices is a direct result of government mismanagement under Liberal leader Justin Trudeau. There's a cost of living crisis happening under Mr. Trudeau, Erin O'Toole told reporters on Wednesday. There's a housing crisis. Families are falling further and further behind. They need help with daycare now. They need flexibility and choice. And they need downward pressure on their bills, he said. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh issued a statement saying Justin Trudeau's housing plan is always meant for big developers, not people who want to find a place they can actually afford. While campaigning in Halifax on Wednesday, Trudeau said the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted the economy and raised prices. Trudeau said, "Let's recognize that our country and our world is bouncing back, coming roaring back in Canada's case from an extreme crisis." The Liberal plan was aimed at providing support to families to help them with affordability. The Conservatives have said they would suppress the inflationary pressure by boosting competition among telecom providers, putting an end to price fixing by grocery store chains, and scrapping the GST for small retailers for the month of December. Policies proposed by major parties would only scratch the surface of soaring housing prices, many observers have said. The Macdonald-Laurier Institute published a report titled Chinese State Interference in Canada's 2021 Election, this week outlining some of the Chinese Communist Party's election interference operations, days before Canadians head to the polls. According to the report, the CCP and actors aligned with it appear to be targeting the credibility of Chinese Canadian candidates and Conservative Party leader Erin O'Toole in the election. An article published on September 9th on the CCP-owned tabloid platform Global Times questioned the credibility of Conservative leader Erin O'Toole and his party's foreign policies on China. The article included a threat: if Canada elects a Conservative government and that government adopts the policies in the Conservative platform, quote, China will pay back with a strong counterstrike and Canada will be the one to suffer. The MLI report deemed this as an obvious effort to influence Canadian debate and voter intention while intimidating future elected officials. It is also not the only example of such interference. CCP-aligned actors have also targeted individual election candidates with information warfare and influence operations intended to discredit and undermine voter support. The report listed the cases of Conservative candidate Kenny Chu and NDP candidate Jenny Kwan, which NTD reported on earlier this week. The MLI report states that Vancouver East New Democrat incumbent Jenny Kwan and Richmond East Conservative incumbent candidate Kenny Chu may have been the targets of pro-CCP organizations. Kwan and Chu's support for Hong Kong pro-democracy protests is likely seen as problematic for the CCP. Chu is on the receiving end of misinformation warfare waged seemingly by the CCP, its actors in Canada, and CCP-controlled Chinese media and Chinese organizations. On WeChat, anonymous accounts have been waging a disinformation campaign about the content and purpose of O'Toole's proposed foreign agent registry. Meanwhile, some other accounts faked the Conservative policy banning WeChat from Canada altogether. WeChat hosts about a billion users around the world and is wildly popular with Chinese Canadians. WeChat is owned by Chinese technology conglomerate Tencent and is closely monitored and controlled by the CCP. An anonymous article posted on WeChat claimed that Kenny Chu, who proposed the Foreign Agents Registry Act in the House of Commons in a private member's bill back in April, was setting out to suppress Chinese Canadians. The article falsely claimed that the act would force all Chinese Canadians to register as foreign agents if they express any sympathetic views on the CCP or if they had connections to China. In fact, Chu's proposed law would require individuals and groups acting on behalf of any foreign government to register with Ottawa. The article has been reposted on Chinese-language websites. Similar content was aired on CCP-affiliated Chinese radio and reported on CCP-affiliated Chinese newspapers. This could directly impact the election outcome in the riding of Steveston, Richmond East. Anonymous articles that distort facts to influence voter intention are examples of disinformation and influence operations intended to affect the outcome of our elections, stated the MLI report. According to the report, the Liberal government introduced the Critical Election Incident Public Protocol, CEIPP, to monitor foreign challenges to the integrity of both the 2019 and 2021 federal elections. According to the government, the protocol includes provisions for informing candidates, organizations, or elected officials if they have been the known target of an attack. It's unknown if the CEIPP is investigating any of these instances of foreign interference. There's no contact information published for the CEIPP. The latest Ipsos poll showed the Conservatives and the Liberals tied at 32%, NDP at 21%, Bloc Québécois at 7% on national basis, or 32% within Quebec, Green Party at 4%, and PPC at 3%. The latest Nanos poll showed the Conservatives at 31.2%, Liberals at 30.5%, NDP at 21.4%, PPC at 6.8%, Bloc Québécois at 6.2%, and Green Party at 3.7%. The Ipsos and Nanos poll results are similar except for the PPC. Nanos poll showed the PPC at number 4, while the Ipsos poll placed the PPC at the bottom of the 6 parties. The Nanos poll uses only phone interviews, while the Ipsos poll uses a 75% online survey and 25% phone interview. And coming up, we have an Ottawa gym owner will not be checking for vaccine passports, and in our snapshot reports, 2 NDP candidates step down and update on the mail-in ballots. But before we continue, please first subscribe if you're new to this channel and turn on that notification bell so you won't miss any new videos. We'll be bringing you election updates from coast to coast and the latest news coverage. Thank you for your support. Now let's get back to our stories. We have less than a week before the vaccine passport system is fully implemented in Ontario, and owners of non-essential businesses are busy learning how to use the official phone app to scan customers. Joshua Fry, owner of OCR Academy Gym, finds himself an exception, however. He said he will not force his customers to show proof of vaccination, as he believes the vaccine passport system threatens his customers' freedom of choice and discriminates based on medical history.
We are pro-choice and pro-informed consent, but where we draw the line is segregation and prohibiting people from coming into my facility based on their own personal views or their medical history.
Joshua said he is not against vaccination, but he is opposed to invading people's personal information.
And like I said, it has nothing to do with vaccination or not. It has to do with the fact that we're invading people's personal information, and that's not okay. We don't want to discriminate against anybody based on either their religious views, their medical history, or their personal views. Fitness is inclusive, and we want everybody to come and enjoy this facility.
He found many others who agree with him and hope they join him in boycotting the passport system. However, he said many are afraid of the outcome of doing so.
I've been inundated with tons of emails. I've had to bring in extra help to answer all of the emails, the social media posts, the Google reviews, the phone calls, the emails. I've just been inundated with support. Majority of the people that have contacted me, I would say probably close to 70 to 80% of everybody who has messaged me have all been pro my stance on not asking people for their own personal medical information. I hope that more business owners unite and stand up and refuse this, but I do know that it's scary and a lot of people are afraid of the outcome. I follow the rules, I followed the law, I followed the mandates in the past, but I like to think that as a citizen of this country that I have the right to be able to stand up and say, you know what, I don't agree with this.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh said anti-Semitic comments by two of his party's candidates who resigned were completely wrong. Singh said during a campaign stop in Essex, Ontario, anti-Semitism is real. We're seeing a scary rise in anti-Semitism and we're unequivocally opposed and will confront it. The party confirmed Wednesday that Dan Osborne, the candidate for the Nova Scotia riding of Cumberland-Colchester, and Sidney Coles, the candidate for Toronto-St. Paul's, ended their campaigns and agreed to educate themselves further about anti-Semitism. Singh said this has no place in his party and the candidates made the right decision to resign. Coles, who had since deleted her Twitter account, allegedly posted misinformation about Israel being linked to missing COVID-19 vaccines. Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center for Holocaust Studies, a nonprofit human rights organization, shared images purportedly from Coles' account over the weekend. Coles later apologized on social media. Osborne was reported in 2019 to have tweeted to Oprah asking if Auschwitz was a real place, referring to the Nazi-run concentration camp in Poland during the Second World War. He responded to backlash about the post on Twitter over the weekend, saying he had tweeted it when he was a teenager. I want to offer an apology, Osborne tweeted Sunday. The role of Auschwitz and the history of the Holocaust is one we should never forget. Anti-Semitism should be confronted and stopped. I can't recall posting that. I was 16 then and can honestly say I didn't mean to cause any harm. Jamie Kurtzner-Roberts, Director of Policy at Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center for Holocaust Studies, said in a news release that she had been in contact with the New Democrats. She was relieved that the candidates stepped down. And with 4 more days until the election day, Canadians will soon have a new parliament. Thousands of Canadians will not be able to vote in the upcoming federal election because of the COVID-19 pandemic, Elections Canada said. With the deadline for mail-in ballots passed as of 6 p.m. on Tuesday, anyone who is diagnosed with COVID-19 between now and Election Day will not be able to vote, as the mandatory isolation period extends beyond Election Day. Elections Canada state that with the increased volume of mail-in ballots, the timeline for results will also change. The counting of local mail-in ballots, those marked and sent to returning officers by voters in their own ridings, won't start until at least September 21st due to Elections Canada's ballot integrity process. That includes, among other measures, checking to see if the outer envelope is signed by the elector and ensuring that the individual has only voted once. Elections Canada can start counting mail-in ballots as well as ballots from the Canadian Armed Forces and incarcerate the electors up to 14 days before Elections Day. Returning officers can also start counting ballots cast at local advance polls 1 hour before polls close on election night. The body has issued just over 1 million voting kits to electors living within their riding, and a little over 552,000 have been returned. Among the 10 ridings with the most special ballot kits requested, 5 were decided in 2019 by fewer votes than the number of special ballots requested in 2021, meaning the voting outcome there could in theory hinge on that factor. The body is also allowing for the first time voters to bring their mail-in ballots to their local polling station on election day if they missed the deadline. These ballots will then be sent to the returning officer. As such, it could take between 2 and 5 days for counting to conclude and for there to be a final result. However, media outlets may still declare a winner beforehand should the results be clear enough for that to happen. Elections Canada will be posting the results of the mail-in ballots at the end of each county shift, 2 to 3 times a day following September 20th. With that said, thank you for watching NTD Canada News. If you like this video, please give us a like and share. It will help more people see our channel. We'll be back with more comprehensive election coverage, and we'll see you next time.